about 15 years ago, my little research center was asked by actually a succession of different agencies and organizations if we could do training for them. Very scary stuff. We were researchers, we didn't know what to do. Eventually we decided we should jump into the cold water. We read some stuff about how to do it, and happy amateurs, we decided to do so. The first paying customer was a large national agency in Sweden. The Director General, he wanted to test his management team. So, pile it on, he said. And so we did. And it was an unmitigated disaster. The Director General, he wasn't participating in the exercise. He was up in the corner taking notes. Now, this was, in a lot of respects, the worst example of how to do this you can think of. It was a hit-and-run thing. We didn't really consider what their needs were. That's what we're talking about. The word test in this regard is not the best way of approaching this, I don't think. Especially when you come to an organization that is unprepared, doesn't really know what they're doing in terms of crisis management or disaster response. So, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Fortunately for us, we sort of learned, and we have continued to do so in the period up until now. And we have some of the, I think they are challenges, like the headline told us to talk about, that we have decided to really take serious. And I think that the educational content of what you're doing is always going to be core to this. Even if it's a well-trained organization that really has been doing training, that has been doing real events over a long time, you really need to think about what are the takeaways here, and what can we actually add to this organization in terms of, it could be, finding interesting ways that reality could hit them, but usually it's about finding their own organizational weaknesses or strengths and using them in situations like these. Just 3 weeks ago, well actually throughout the spring we've been planning for, but 3 weeks ago we had an exercise for the Swedish government. And, just approaching that situation means that you have to take care of everything that is around how a government makes decisions. And first of all, we needed to think about support functions. They are used to having them all over the place, so we need to train them, right? We need to, if they're not going to be in the room or somewhere nearby, we need to simulate those support functions. So it's a long haul of actually trying to create a situation that is useful for them. I'm not saying realistic, because it's never really going to be realistic when you do this type of exercise. Now, training needs. Also, you need to think about what are the information needs, because you can always come in with a scenario and hit people over the head with it, and they're going to be confused and they're going to have trouble to sort of understand what is going on. But you need to provide enough information for them to have a meaningful process of making sense of what they're seeing. Sometimes that can take time, and then you can keep on feeding new problems to them, but it's not going to be very helpful in dealing with what's in front of them. You need to make this process, if not enjoyable, because it's usually not, it could be exciting, but it has to be something, you have to be in a state of mind where you can actually learn from what you're doing. So we tried to talk about having a controlled environment, and especially if you're talking to high-profile leaders, they do not want to read about what they said in next day's morning paper. So all of this, the sort of trust that has been talked about earlier today, is very important in order to create an environment where people are actually willing to sort of put something on the stake and say, in a situation like this, we may have to think differently than we usually do. I think that's very important. Another thing that has come up, and it has to do with the relationship between academic and practitioners and all other, divisions that we can think of here. We need to have a decent amount of respect for each other's knowledge. If you walk into a room full of politicians and tell them, I know everything about disaster response, and I'm going to teach you in 2 hours. They are going to shut down because you're not showing, I think, the amount of respect that you should, because these are people that have other experiences that can be brought to bear on the situation. And they know things about political symbolism and other things that will be very important in a disaster situation that your research may not have led you to yet. So a healthy amount of respect and actually listening to these people and to the different kind of solutions that can come out. It's not always easy because you want to run these things in a timely way, but sometimes you have to stop and realize that our scenario just flew out the window and we're now talking about something completely different. And you need to be able to react to that. I'm doing fine, great. I think that you can get interesting things out of this, and one of them, knowing something about disaster risk reduction, disaster response, is that you can challenge preconceptions that are out there in the group that you are training. And there's a lot of it. And your research can actually show you to some of them, and you can, give them really hard challenges that make them question sometimes sort of quite fundamental organizational, sometimes even political truths that they bring into that room. I'm not saying you should do propaganda, but I'm saying you should present them with ways that they can question some of the things that they bring into that room. Sometimes you see that in doing priorities in situations like these, it can be very painful because societal values that some of the people in the rooms that I have been in, some societal values cannot be questioned. No way we're going to maximize this and that. We're going to take care of everybody in downtown of this city, but we're also taking care of the rural areas. And then, they get faced with these terrible priorities that they have to make. And I think that is a good exercise for anyone who is set in a situation where they should, make decisions on behalf of the community. Making priorities can be really tough, but if we do not train that and think about that, it's going to be impossible once those hard decisions come up. So these are some of the issues that we try to invest in these exercises, and I think the hopeful part for academics in engaging in this is that I usually learn more and get more sort of food for thought for research doing this than doing a lot of the other activities that is usually considered more research. A lot of the new ideas and interesting things to look into comes from these interactions because you're often very intense and you see that these are the issues that really should be bothering both of our communities. So I do think that this is a way where we can find common interest and do good things. Thank you.
Many thanks.